In a bright roadside cafe, James's father smiled like a gentleman and spoke like a lock clicking shut. "Bring what you're hiding," he'd ordered. James unwrapped the painting right there at the table. Warm color, flared, our shop light, two little silhouettes, and a man beside them, protecting, not owning. His father's eyes narrowed. "If you refuse my umbrella," he said softly, "then I'll meet Ms. Lee to Diep. Alone." James stood, voice calm as stone. "No." On the drive back, my phone buzzed. A stranger came to the gate asking Anna's father's name. I didn't answer. If you believe a mother's peace is sacred, please tap like and stay with us. This story is for every woman who has guarded a home with her heart. But to understand how we reach that table, we have to return to yesterday morning. Morning didn't ask if we were ready. James's phone lit up beside the rice bowl. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., public. Bring what you're hiding. He stared until the screen went dark, then flipped, the phone face down. His shoulders tightened, and then, with effort, loosened. He wasn't denying fear. He was refusing to feed it. Nye burst in, bright as a bell. "Hungry!" Anna followed, hair wild, notebook hugged to her chest. She looked between us and asked solemnly, "Do we still have oranges?" James chose a smile. "We always have oranges," he said, lifting Nye until she squealed. "And we always have you." He moved through breakfast like he was building a wall. Hand-washing, spoonfuls, gentle jokes. I watched him hold normal life steady while the clock inside me ticked toward 10. The wrapped painting leaned against the table, brown paper taped cleanly around it. James had retaped it last night with quiet hands, not hiding it, preparing it. Anna drifted close and touched the paper. James covered her fingertip. "This one is for grown-ups," he murmured. "Is it sad?" she asked. He hesitated, then shook his head. "It's honest," he said. "Honest things can make people change." Change warmed my chest like a small ember. I didn't trust it yet, but I carried it anyway. At Hill Fruits, we opened like we always did. Routine was our anchor. People came for sweetness they could hold. I smiled, counted change, kept my hands busy so my heart wouldn't run wild. Luan stopped by for fruit and stayed too long, eyes always returning to the road. Officer Thu passed once and nodded, quiet reassurance. At 9:20, Anna's neighbor arrived. We told Anna she was in charge of kindness production for an hour. She puffed up like a little boss and marched out, proud. Nye curled in the back room, heavy with sleep. I hummed her usual lullaby, because if I changed that, fear would win a small victory. When I returned, James was rubbing a clean cloth over his palms. "You're really bringing it," I said, nodding toward the painting. "I am," he replied. "And I'm bringing one sentence he can't twist." My throat tightened. Then I'm coming. I want you beside me, he said, not behind me. He carried the painting out like it was breakable and sacred. We closed the shop without spectacle. The world didn't need to know our private war. The cafe was bright and busy enough to feel safe. Cups clinked, laughter rose and fell. Ordinary life moved around us like it always had, uncaring, steady. James's father sat by the window. He stood when he saw James, politeness arriving before warmth, controlled, smile, measured voice. James, he said, as if the name belonged to him. James nodded. Sir. His father's gaze flicked to me. This is her, James corrected him calmly. This is my partner, Miss Diep. We sat. James placed the wrapped painting on the chair beside him like a sort of third presence. His father's eyes locked onto it. You brought it, he said. You asked, James replied. His father folded his hands. Let's be practical. I can make problems disappear, contracts, gossip. This shop, life, all it takes is discipline. Quiet. Quiet. The word landed like a lid over a pot. Hold it down until it stops making noise. The shop is work, James said. Work can be managed, his father replied. Come back under my umbrella. You'll be safe. Safe sounded like a cage with soft padding. James's voice stayed polite. Safe for who? His father's eyes sharpened. For you. For your mother. For your new life. There it was, the lever. James didn't flinch. I spoke to her, he said. A pause. His father gave a small, dismissive laugh. She's always been emotional. I waited for anger. It didn't come. What came was clarity. I didn't come to argue, James said. I came to set boundaries. His father leaned back, amused. Boundaries. James's fingers found the tape. He peeled it, slowly, carefully, as if opening a door. The paper loosened. Color appeared. He lifted the wrapping away. The painting caught the cafe light and glowed. Our shop gate, the warm spill of light into the road. Two small silhouettes held close, and a man beside them. Not owning, but protecting. James's father stared. For the first time, his calm expression shifted. What is this? He asked, quieter now. It's what you tried to erase, James said softly. The part of me that believed home matters more than status. His father's jaw worked. A painting doesn't. It's not just a painting, James cut in. I'm not returning. I'm not shrinking my partner's life. And you don't get to use my mother as leverage. His father's eyes narrowed. So you're choosing a shop over family. James didn't blink. I'm choosing family, he said. Not control. Silence pooled. Then his father's gaze drifted to the little figures under the shop light. His breath changed, slightly, unwillingly. Your mother kept this, he said. Yes, James answered. She still disobeys, his father murmured. She still loves, James replied. Love hung between them like a candle flame, small, fragile, real. His father's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then lifted his eyes with a tighter smile. Fine, he said softly. If you won't accept my umbrella, we do it another way. James's spine stayed straight. What way? His father leaned forward, voice lowered like a private offer. I will meet Ms. Lai Tu Diep, he said. Alone. Cold rushed through me. James's voice didn't rise. No, he said. You don't get private access to my life. His father's smile barely moved. We'll see. James stood, lifted the painting with care, and ended it. We're done. We walked out together, no pleading, no bending. Outside, light hit my face like a slap. James opened the door for me with the same gentleness he used at home. And that gentleness, right after that threat, was the first tiny crack where warmth entered. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the neighbor watching Anna. Anna is fine, but someone came to the gate asking her father's name. I didn't answer. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. James read the screen over my shoulder. His jaw tightened once. Then he forced it loose again. Fear wanted the steering wheel. James didn't let it take it. The shop bell rang, and I flinched so hard my hands almost knocked over the coins. Jamontoms was already at the front. Not panicked, just ready. But it was only a customer, smiling, harmless, ordinary. The neighbor's text still burned on my screen. Someone asked about Anna's father's name. A polite question with teeth. James took one slow breath. We treat this as real, he said, and we keep. Be living. He spoke to Luan in a low, steady voice. Stand near the gate. If anyone asks about the kids, don't argue. Just text me. Luan nodded and stepped outside without hesitation. Then James looked at me. Call her, he murmured. Thank her. Ask what he looked like. He smiled too much. The neighbor said, clean clothes. Asked once, then left. My stomach tightened. Polite men can slide into your life without ever raising their voice. James leaned close to the phone. You protected her, he said. Thank you. If he comes again, you don't answer. You message us first. When I hung up, every sound in the shop felt sharp. I wanted to pull the shutters down and hide our children behind wood and silence. James didn't let fear turn us into shadows. He wrote a small sign and set it by the fruit baskets. Please don't ask about the children. Simple, normal, a boundary that didn't invite a fight. Officer Thu appeared near the road like quiet backup. I didn't promise miracles. He gave us a plan. Stay public, he said. Build a net. Neighbors who know. People who call. No private meetings. Save every message. James nodded. If my father sends someone, he said, I want it recorded. It will be, Officer Thu replied. You're not alone. We picked up Anna before sunset. She ran to us, notebook bouncing. I drew a new shop, she announced, shoving the paper into my hands. Her drawing was all light. Big sun, bright window, tiny figures holding hands. James crouched to her level. Sweetheart, he said gently. Did someone talk to you today? Anna frowned. A man smiled, she said. He asked Auntie something. I didn't go to the gate. Relief hit me so hard I had to blink. That was smart, James told her. If anyone asks your name, or my name, or Mommy's name, what do you do? Anna lifted her chin. I say I don't know, she recited. I go get a grown-up. James nodded once, proud and aching. Exactly. That night, Nye startled awake, crying. The kind of cry that makes a mother's heart sprint. I held her until her breath smoothed. James stood behind me, palm warm on her back. We can't let him poison our home, I whispered. He won't, James said. Not if we keep telling the truth to each other. When the children finally slept, the kitchen grew still. The wrapped painting lay on the table again, quiet as a secret we were tired of carrying. You saw your father today, I said. When you said love. James's eyes were distant. He's made of control, he admitted. And control panics when it can't own the story. He looked at me like he was stepping into sunlight. I used to think my father was the only door, he said. If I didn't walk through him, I'd be nothing. And now? I asked. Now I know I'm already someone, he said, voice rough. Because you and the girls look at me like I'm home. My throat burned. I squeezed his hand. You are home, I said. James closed his eyes for a second, as if that sentence healed something old. Then he picked up his phone. Not a meeting, he said before I could speak. A boundary, in writing. He typed slowly, choosing words like stepping stones. Do not approach my children. Do not send anyone to our gate. If you want to speak, you do it in public, with witnesses, and with my partner beside me. Any further contact will be documented. That's the sentence, I whispered. The one he can't misunderstand, James said, and pressed send. Silence sat with us. Then his phone buzzed. James read the reply, and surprise crossed his face. Then a guarded calm, he turned the screen toward me. 6 words. Public. You bring your mother. My mother, James repeated as if the past had grabbed his collar. I felt possibility flicker, dangerous, bright. "You don't have to be ready," I said softly. "You only have to be honest." Before he answered, my phone rang. "James's, her mother." My hands went cold. I answered, and her voice came through careful and soft, like someone stepping onto thin ice. "Ms. Diep," she said. "I heard you were there." "Yes," I whispered. A long pause held years inside it. "I kept that painting," she said at last, "because it reminded me my son could be gentle, and gentle is not weakness." Tears rose fast. "He's gentle. With us," I said. "With the girls." On the other end, she made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "The girls," she repeated, tasting the word like it hurt and healed. Then, her voice lowered. "Please," she whispered, "don't let him face my husband alone. He will try to make James feel small again." James took the phone from my hand. "Mom," he said, one trembling, brave word. "I'm sorry," she breathed. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you better." James's eyes shone. He didn't punish her for the past. He chose tenderness. "I'm here," he said quietly. "And I'm not small anymore." When the call ended, the house felt different, as if a locked door had finally clicked open. James stood, unwrapped the painting one last time, and hung it on the kitchen wall where anyone could see. Anna padded in, sleepy-eyed, and stared up at the bright window in the picture. "It's our light," she murmured. James knelt and kissed her forehead. "Yes," he said, "and it stays on." Nye toddled in behind her, pointed at the glowing colors, and giggled, as if she recognized warmth itself. I stood there with my hand over my heart, because this was the crack where warmth entered. Not because danger vanished, not because James's father suddenly became kind, but because our home stopped hiding. That night, we slept with the shutters down, the children breathing softly, and the painting shining on our wall like a small lighthouse. Outside, control was still patient. Inside, love finally sounded louder than fear.